Call to order. Oops. There we go. There. Call to order the regular meeting of the Laramie City Council, Tuesday, September 19, 2023. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. We have a number of recognitions and proclamations that we will begin with tonight. But first, we'll start with public comment on non-agenda item. Oh, roll call. Sorry. City Clerk, can you start with the roll call, please?
Gabriel.
Here.
Newman. Newman. We have a Brandon online, Vice Mayor, but I'm not sure if that's him, so we'll move on. O'Doherty.
Here. Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now, Brandon.
Sorry, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Pierce.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Shumway.
Here.
Somerville.
Here.
Cumby.
Here.
And Harrington. Absent. So we have 8 present and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next, public comment on non-agenda items. If there are any individuals with us tonight who would like to speak on non-agenda items, please come forward. If there's anyone on Zoom, you may raise your hand. Seeing none, we will close this public comment. Next, Councilor Pierce.
Thanks. I move that the agenda be set as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Thank you. Next, we will go on to the proclamations. The first proclamation will be read by Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. Okay, this is the proclamation for National Custodial Recognition Day, and we do have some folks in the audience that we would like to acknowledge. Kevin McIntyre, Charles Page, Justin Gabriel, and Blake Levisted. If y'all are here, we'll have you come up after I finish reading the proclamation. Whereas on October 2nd, National Custodial Workers Recognition Day encourages appreciation to the men and women who keep our schools and workplaces across the nation running smoothly, and whereas the City of Laramie has a facilities maintenance division that conducts custodial and maintenance duties for city facilities and properties, and whereas these workers operate behind the scenes and are often underappreciated for the hard work they do day after day, and whereas these are the personnel keeping city facilities and properties clean and well-maintained. And whereas, while delivering outstanding services and running a well-maintained and operating building, they contribute to critical first impressions and the success of the city's operations. And whereas their skill saves our city money as well-maintained carpets and surfaces last longer, and seasonal updates and maintenance help buildings to run more efficiently, and as a result, the buildings are safer and healthier for those entering them. And whereas the work is physically demanding, and depending on the position, these workers may work varying shifts and possibly in several locations. And whereas we can all do our part to help them do their jobs too, we can be clean ourselves by keeping workstations neat, picking up after ourselves, doing some light dusting around our office desks or cubicle, and acknowledging that there is no reason to leave a mess for anyone else where we can simply do our part to help. Now, therefore, be it resolved to further the awareness of the value of the Facilities Maintenance Division that Brian Harrington, acting as Mayor and President of the governing body of the City of Laramie, does hereby proclaim October 2nd, 2023 as National Custodial Workers Recognition Day, and I encourage staff and residents to celebrate the importance of custodial workers within our city and our community.
Honorable Mayor, Councilor Richardson, thanks for reading that proclamation into place for us. I'm excited to have the guys here tonight. This crew has been under enormous strain ever since a little bit before the pandemic, and as we've seen changes in the way that custodial and maintenance care happens, this crew has done nothing but kind of smile through it and take the best steps forward and change their processes and do everything they can to keep us clean and safe. Here lately, they've been understaffed and they have monumental tasks above them just beyond cleaning that I want you to be aware of. When it comes to pool blowouts, facilities maintenance does that. They have to lift off those toys and move them out of the way so that they can empty the water and blow the pool out and fill glycol into those places. Anytime we have major maintenance items, they repair all the cardio equipment at the rec center, all the weight benches. They work on the basketball hoops. They work on HVAC systems throughout the entire facility, plumbing systems and all that. So they do so much more than just custodial maintenance. Custodial maintenance is an annual day to honor what they do for custodial maintenance, but it's just so much more of a team than that. And I can't say how much I appreciate what they've done from their leader, Kevin McIntyre, through the entire crew. So with that, I'd like to give them a round of applause and get them up. Do a picture?
Okay, our next proclamation, Deaf Awareness Week. And I will read that. Whereas Deaf Awareness Week was first celebrated by the World Federation of the Deaf, WFD, in 1958, this event is also known as International Week of Deaf, commemorating the first Congress of the World Federation of the Deaf, which took place in September 1951. And whereas at least 20 deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing individuals reside in Laramie, and whereas the community benefits from many contributions of deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing residents, and whereas the purpose of Deaf Awareness Week is to increase public awareness of the issue and the culture of people who are deaf. The event is an opportunity to promote equal access to information and services for deaf individuals and to educate the public about the microconceptions of being deaf deaf, and whereas the last week of September has been designated as Deaf Awareness Week to celebrate and recognize deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing individuals and promote awareness in the community. Now therefore it be resolved that I, on behalf of Brian Harrington, Mayor and President of governing body of the City of Laramie, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim the last week of September 2023 as Deaf Awareness Week, and I encourage all citizens, businesses, public and private agencies, religious and educational institutions to join in observing the week in honor of persons who are deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing. Thank you. And I think there's no one here to pick that up. Councillor O'Doherty, I'm wondering, would you like to say any words on behalf of this proclamation?
Just that the Disability Council is in favor of this and appreciate it. Thank you.
If we can go on to the public hearings.
So, Vice Mayor, the first public hearing we have is for the Ridgeline Estates subdivision preliminary plat. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in City Council Chambers, Laramie City Hall, 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. The meeting shall be held with both online Zoom and in-person option to take public comments on the following. PP 22-02, a preliminary plat proposing a 9.02 acre subdivision consisting of 2/3 proposed lots. The subdivision is being proposed on the undeveloped parcel of land at the corner of 30th Street and Kearney Street in Laramie, Wyoming, 82072. The application has been submitted by CT Enterprises LLC. All applications, plans, and specifications relative to these matters are available for review at the City of Laramie Planning Office at 405 Grand Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present at City Council chambers or via Zoom. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone wish public comment on this public hearing at this point in time? If you're on Zoom, raise your hand. If you're here with us, please come up to the podium. Seeing none, we will move on to the next public hearing.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The next public hearing is on original ordinance number 2065, amending Laramie Municipal Code 15.14.050I, off-street utility, dumpster, recycling, trash handling, and recycling facilities. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing of the Laramie City Council will be held on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in City Council Chambers, Laramie City Hall, 406 Ivinson Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. The meeting shall be held both online, Zoom, and in-person options to take public comments on the following. Original ordinance number 2065, TA-23-02, amendments to Title 15-.14.010, off-street utility, dumpster, recycling, trash handling, and recycling facilities. Applicant, the City of Laramie. All applications, plans, and specifications relative to these matters are available for review at the City of Laramie Planning Office at 405 Grand Avenue, Laramie, Wyoming. Anyone wishing to be heard should be present at City Council chambers or via Zoom. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Is there anyone that wishes to make public comment on this public hearing at this time? Seeing none? Yes?
We have Brett Glass online.
All right, if you would bring him in.
Okay, he's with us.
Thank you, Mr. Glass, for joining us. You have 3 minutes.
Honorable Mayor Cumbie, members of council, good evening. I'll be brief. The ordinance that you have under consideration tonight requires that masonry enclosures, specifically made out of masonry, be built around dumpsters. And this seems like a good idea in many cases, especially if you're building a housing development. If you're doing, especially in a residential neighborhood where you want to keep things aesthetically pleasing. Unfortunately, this is not the way it's done in Laramie's downtown. In Laramie's downtown, many of the buildings are built all the way to the lot lines. People will have dumpsters, and what they will do, and the city has actually requested that people do this, is that they put their dumpsters against the building in the public alley. And, well, even if you want to, you can't build a structure in a public alley, so you couldn't possibly build an enclosure for your dumpster there. So in order to make sure that people are still able to have a dumpster, and again, the city actually requests that people have them in particular spots, we should probably consider making an amendment to this ordinance in which we exempt the downtown district. It would be nice if we could make more room downtown, if we could give people more space, more land, but there's no more to be had. Let's see if we can make sure that the ordinance doesn't preclude people from being able to manage all of the conventions which make downtown work. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. We appreciate your joining us tonight. Next, we'll go on to announcements. And the first announcement is Laramie Police Department employee recognition. Chief Brown?
Vice Mayor, Council, thank you for this opportunity tonight to recognize some of our employees and a citizen of Laramie. It's a somber topic. We had a homicide that occurred in June of 2022, which I'll get a little bit further into in a second. But it's not lost on me or the members of our department that a significant event like a homicide in our community can be shocking to the conscience of a community. And I really wanted to take the time to do this in front of council and recognize the work of our employees, their stellar performance, and also a member of our community who supported the family and helped initiate this investigation, and ultimately that led to a suitable conclusion. So I will start with asking our officers to come up. Officer Leibowitz, Sergeant Leibowitz now, Detective Patrick Bungner, Evidence Technician Jennifer Kelly, and Detective Sergeant Sally Dallas. This letter recognizes the work of Detective Sergeant Sally Dallas, now Sergeant, then Detective Matthew Leibowitz, Detective Patrick Bungner, and Evidence Technician Jennifer Kelly, for their professionalism and exhaustive efforts during a complex homicide investigation. On June 27, 2022, Laramie Police Department patrol officers responded to a call of a welfare check on a subject who had not shown up for work. Detective Leibowitz, now Sergeant Leibowitz, assisted patrol with the investigation, which ultimately resulted in the arrest of 2 suspects. Once the first arrest was made, Detective Sergeant Sally Dallas and Detective Patrick Bungner responded to assist Detective Matthew Leibowitz with the crime scene processing and evidence collection. For the next 6 months, the 3 of them, along with Evidence Technician Jennifer Kelly, worked diligently to ensure the Deputy Albany County Prosecuting Attorney had everything needed for a successful prosecution. They worked countless hours executing search warrants, packaging and submitting evidence, meeting with expert witnesses, conducting interviews and follow-up investigations, completing reports, and coordinating with out-of-state agencies. They also testified at several court hearings. More specifically, Detective Leibowitz submitted 18 police reports, authored 9 search warrants, oversaw all witness preparation, and drove to California to interview and assist in the arrest of the second suspect. Detective Bungner submitted 9 police reports and authored 12 separate search warrants. Evidence technician Kelly processed over 321 pieces of evidence, prepared and submitted 100 plus items to the state lab for examination, and assisted with the preparation of 606 items for discovery. Sergeant Dallas submitted 3 police reports and also drove to California to interview and assist in the arrest of the second subject, monitored countless jail calls, all while overseeing the entire investigation. Actions like these show the true spirit and character of a Laramie Police Department employee. Your actions displayed unusual attention to duty and performance of your assigned functions in an exceptionally effective manner, as well as exemplified the Laramie Police Department mission statement to protect and serve with dignity and respect. Thank you for illustrating exceptional community service. Thank you. Thank you for your service, guys. Sure. No? Do you want me to do the citizen one too? Mr. Cisneros, come on up. So I had an opportunity to talk with the mother of the victim. And she had emailed me shortly after I became chief, and then we spoke on the phone, and then I had an opportunity to spend some time with her husband, and the 3 siblings of the victim. And one thing that she abundantly made clear is that essentially demanded that we recognize these officers, but also Mr. Cisneros. And after looking at the case ourselves, we recognize why she had those demands, because of the exceptional work of our team, but also the care that you put for your employee, your friend, and one of our community members. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'll read a little bit about what occurred on that day. This is technically a citizen service citation, but it's not a typical citation. This citation is to recognize Mr. Cisneros for his assistance with law enforcement and his community concern during a complex homicide investigation. On June 27, 2022, Mr. Cisneros called the Laramie Police Department dispatch to report that his friend and employee, Matthew Caggiano, was a missing person. Matthew had not shown up for work and was not answering Mr. Cisneros' telephone calls. This was very out of character for Matthew and concerning to Mr. Cisneros. During an intensive 4-day search for Mr. Cisneros, competent and reliable information allowed Laramie Police Department patrol officers and detectives to narrow down a timeline of events and to locate valuable witnesses. Ultimately, Matthew was found, and the 2 people responsible for his murder were subsequently arrested and convicted. Mr. Cisneros continued to assist law enforcement by providing historical information and communication with Matthew's family. Long after the initial investigation was completed, he retrieved Matthew's pickup truck and made sure it was in working order so the family could retrieve it and drive it back to Idaho. Mr. Cisneros is a kind and considerate citizen who went above and beyond for his family and his friend. He significantly contributed to the successful resolution of a reprehensible crime that shook the entire Laramie community. Thank you, Mr. Cisneros, for your dedication to making Laramie a safer place by helping law enforcement investigate, arrest, and prosecute those who chose to break the law and prey on the citizens of Albany County. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
while Nancy gets ready, I also would be remiss if I didn't recognize two other individuals. Lieutenant Gwen Smith, who's in the back of the room, was the lieutenant in charge of this division when the investigation was occurring. And just based on my relationship with her and being able to work with her over the last year, I've seen how strong of an individual and leader she is. I'd also like to thank Deputy Albany County Attorney Becky Farley, who's back here also. Her leadership and prosecution, successful prosecution of the two suspects in this case led to an outcome that the family was very thankful for. And I think they may be on Zoom tonight, so it was important for them to be a part of this process. So thank you both.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for that. Next, City Manager Jordan, would you be introducing monthly staff recognition?
Yes, thank you. I'm honored to talk to you, Council, tonight about our Employee of the Month, and that is Benjamin Hiller. Benjamin was nominated by coworker Chad Sessions from the wastewater treatment plant. And unfortunately, he won't be able to be here with us tonight. I'm pretty sure my office said they hadn't received an RSVP, but I'd like to tell you a little bit about him and the great work he does. He has been with the city since September of 2019, transferring to the wastewater treatment plant division in July 4th, actually, of 2022. He has successfully passed all 4 levels of testing to be a certified wastewater treatment plant operator on the first try. He's very proud of that, and he should be. Those tests are quite challenging. He says that one of his favorite things to do is working in the lab. He enjoys the chemistry and the science part of wastewater treatment, noting that he really enjoys the natural processes, if you will, that the city uses to treat our wastewater that does not involve chemicals, but does involve a lot of complex laboratory science to make sure things are treated appropriately. Ben is from Albany County, growing up in Laramie and Bosler, still has family all throughout the county, and he's also talented musically and occasionally performs downtown during open mic nights. So just a really great addition to our team here at the City of Laramie. We're blessed to have him, and I want to acknowledge his fantastic contributions to the City of Laramie. And then if I could, Vice Mayor, I also wanted to acknowledge our part-time employees of the month that we are giving kudos to. As you know, our part-time workers are invaluable members of the city's team. And this month we are recognizing Lauren Wade, Jada Coffin, Alex Lewis, and Mercedes Bartholomew, all from the aquatics and recreation section, and all doing fantastic work to keep those programs and our aquatic facilities functioning and safe. So thank you so much.
Thank you, City Manager. I have one brief acknowledgement I would like to make. I would like to acknowledge the passing of Mary Berman, who died Friday, September 15th. Mary was the former dean of the School of Nursing here and made significant contributions to the health and well-being of our community. In 1999, she was the co-founder of the Downtown Clinic, served as a nurse practitioner for over a decade, and was on the board for 2 decades. Mary believed and demonstrated that everyone deserves quality health. She will be missed. Thank you. Councilor Pierce. Oh. Are there any disclosures from council? Thank you. Councilor Pierce.
Okay, I move that the consent agenda be approved and that each specific action on the consent agenda be approved as indicated.
Second.
We have a second from Councilor Gabriel. Roll call. City Clerk.
Okay. Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington. Absent. That's 8 yeses and 0 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to the regular agenda. Councilor Gabriel.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move that the Laramie City Council approve the agreement for professional design and architectural services between the City of Laramie, Wyoming and MOA Architecture in Casper, Wyoming for the Plenty Unlimited Inc. project, Jupiter Research and Development Facility, in an amount not to exceed $2,101,360, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Todd, was that the right amount? Because Ryan might have done my notes before.
Mr. Feaser.
I wasn't listening. $2,101,360? Did we get a second?
Yes.
I second.
Councilor Pierce, second.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Tonight, we're taking the first step in the development of the Plenty Project Jupiter. That's the research and development facility that will be the new addition to the Sears Sky Tech Park at the corner of 22nd and Cumulus, I believe, is what the cross street is. But it's been an exciting project so far. As you all may remember, the City of Laramie was awarded a $20 million grant from the Wyoming Business Council to help increase the business-ready community by adding business space and research and development space for Plenty Agriculture. Tonight on the line, I don't want to forget, I've got Greg Slate from Plenty here tonight, and then Brandon Daigle from MOA Architecture, who's the firm that we're expecting to be awarded the contract tonight on Zoom. So through the process, the city staff and Plenty and Laramie Chamber Business Alliance developed an RFQ for qualifications. We released that RFQ. We received 8 applications, 8 proposals. They were all excellent proposals. Very difficult to whittle those down. We did get it knocked down to 4 that we interviewed. We interviewed 4 fantastic firms, and we were able to come to consensus to select MOA Architecture as the #1 firm to lead this project. MOA Architecture is based out of Casper, Wyoming. They will be helping us with our CMAR selection, design of the facility, pre-design, construction services, some cost estimating, site plan, civil, a whole myriad of projects. They have a team here that has other Wyoming firms, including Coffee Engineering, who's here locally, will be doing their site work for them. It's a fantastic team. We're excited to have them on board, and we're excited to get this project going. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Council, are there any questions? Seeing none, we'll move to the public. Are there any questions on this item from members of the public? If you're here, please come up to the podium or raise your hand if you're on Zoom. Seeing none, we'll return to council. Any comments? Councilor Shumway.
I just want everyone to know that this is a homegrown, very successful operation that is spun off out of the University of Wyoming and also the business incubator. It's been great to see them not only thrive, but to grow and to bring a great industry to our community, and grateful that they're here, even though that they're reaching out across the United States. This is their home base, very much is in the city of Laramie.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just wanted to also add that I appreciate that this is a company who is going to be paying self-sufficient wages that will help folks here have high-quality lives, and it's just appreciated that that's encompassed in all of this as well.
Thank you, Councilor Richardson. Any other comments? Roll call.
Gabriel.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington. Absent. That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion passes. Number 12, Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that City Council award the bid for Spring Creek Trail Phase 1 to Ryman Corporation of Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the amount of $1,071,163.55. Authorize a contingency of $107,100 for a total amount not to exceed $1,178,263.55. Amend the fiscal year 2024 budget accordingly, and authorize the city manager to sign the associated bid form, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Shumway, second by Councilor Richardson.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, it's again a pleasure to be here in front of you tonight. I forgot to turn that on. In typical fashion, I always like to try to bite off the hardest thing to do first, and this particular section of trail was difficult to get designed and engineered. We were the lucky recipient of 2 TAP grants. The first one was for design and engineering, which came up with the original design. The second one was $500,000 for construction of the project, which is matched in this with 2018 SPT funds. We actually had 4 bids come in on this. One was non-responsive. It was just fencing bids. It was not a complete bid, and we were only $100,000 over the engineer's estimate from 2 years ago, which was really exciting. This project includes about a quarter mile of shared use path from Laurel Park to 30th, following Spring Creek Trail. It has 2 enhanced crossing, 1 enhanced crossing at the crosswalk into Whiting High School, 1 enhanced crossing at 3rd Street that will include a rapid flash beacon to try to give people crossing a more secure and safe passage. We also have berm stabilization and a trailhead that's going to be constructed at Laurel Park where the old green waste station was. So we have continued to see some dumping in that green waste. I think this will finally put all of that to an end and will turn that into a much more usable place. I've actually worked with Ryman many times. Ryman, this crew is the same crew that just completed the Curtis Street Bridge over project for YDOT, so they're excited to stay in Laramie and be with us, and staff recommends approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant City Manager. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none. Are there any questions from the public regarding this item? Or if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand.
Vice Mayor, we have Judy Snoke.
All right. Go ahead and bring Ms. Snoke in. Good evening, Judy Snoke. Glad that you could join us.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
You are unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you, for doing this. I have a question about exactly where this starts and ends. I thought you said 30th to LaPrelle Park. Is that correct? I'm trying to envision this because that's an area that I know and have walked a lot.
Honorable Mayor, through you, yeah, that's correct. It actually, if I was to give you a place of start, I would say it starts to the east of Regency Retirement Center, follows the creek to the south, and then follows the creek to the west to the Sisters Bridge, which was just named a few years ago in honor of Tanner Hyde's work that he did on making that bridge ADA accessible.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, I return to council. Do you have any comments or questions left? City Clerk, roll call.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington. Absent. That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
That motion passes. Thank you. Item 13, Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to approve Ridgeline Estate preliminary plat based on finding of fact and conclusion of law, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the plat.
Second.
That motion is seconded.
Vice Mayor, Council, tonight I have before you a preliminary plat, which is the first step in a subdivision process for a subdivision that's roughly 9.2 acres and roughly 32 lots. This subdivision is located on the corner of Harney and 30th, and that would be the northwest corner, the lot that is vacant there. And is considered an infill development. This application was submitted in July 20th, 2022, and the lots range in size between around 7,300 to 11,000, or roughly 12,000 square feet, which is consistent with the subdivisions surrounding it, which is the Alta Vista subdivision and also the Richards Park subdivision. The subdivision will be accessible off of 3 access points off of Harney Street. There will be a loop and then another street bisecting that. We have heard some concern over the entry point that's closest to 30th and Harney intersection, and due to that there's going to be what we call a pork chop there, so it's right in, right out. Another name for that would be right in, right out channelizing island. Pork chop's a little bit easier to say a few more times. But the streets will be built to, according to city standards, with curb gutter sidewalks on both sides of the street. The setup of those intersections will help reduce the amount of impact that it will have on 30th and Harney Street. The area surrounding this subdivision varies. We do have primarily single-family residential to both the north and the east sides of this subdivision, with the Richards Park subdivision and the Alta Vista subdivision being right there. On the south side, we do have, it's zoned R3, but it is the university, and it is the university's Laramie Research and Extension Center. On the west side of that, there is single-family residential as well. In the review process, we go through all of our guiding master plans, our comprehensive plans, and this subdivision certainly meets the requirements of that plan, or those plans. Throughout those plans, it's pretty clear that the City of Laramie wants to focus on infill development, not only because to maximize use of property within city limits already, but also to utilize key infrastructure that has already been placed, and not overextending ourselves throughout beyond what we can manage already. Additionally, as you all have heard many times, housing is in short supply, and developable lots are certainly in short supply. That includes single-family residential lots, which this subdivision will accommodate. Additionally, economic growth within the city is hampered by a lack of housing, and the continued addition to developable lots will help alleviate those problems. In the design process of this, there was some conflict between the Parks and Rec Master Plan and our comprehensive plan, one of which showed a multi-use path bisecting the property. After reviewing it with Parks and Rec staff, it was determined that the multi-use path bisecting the property wasn't valuable, and that it would be kind of unnecessary at this point. So most of the efforts have been focused on 30th Street and Harney Street. As a result, the developer will be required to do a park in lieu fee upon completion or submittal of each lot. As already discussed, some of the major issues that were looked at during this process were traffic and street layout. This development will have 2 new streets that will be added, with 3 access points off of Harney Street. There was some discussion on accessing 30th Street, however, the slopes on that hill were too great, and it didn't make sense to access off 30th Street. However, one of the access points is fairly close to that 30th and Harney intersection, and per city engineer and the applicant's engineer's recommendation, we put in a pork chop there, so it will only be right in, right out, in an attempt to alleviate some of the congestion that we see there at peak hours. Drainage is also something that came up considerably when we were reviewing this subdivision. We heard from neighboring properties that the subdivision to the north, Richards Park subdivision, had seen a considerable amount of flooding in the past during our major rain events. In order to mitigate some of that, grading will occur on the property, but also there's been a detention pond added along 30th Street where most of the water will head to before it heads down and goes down 30th Street and then Reynolds Street to go to the other detention ponds in the area. I do want to note that it is the responsibility of the property owner to make sure that there's not any additional water flow off of the property into neighboring properties. They're required to address current historical flows on that property. And during this process, the grading of the property is going to actually minimize the flow off of that north side of the property into neighboring residents' property. As far as water and sewer goes, the subdivision is going to be serviced by city water and sewer and is up to city standards. In order to approve a preliminary plat, as you see in the planning document, there's a number of criteria that needs to be met. For the most part, these criteria are met. The only criteria that's a little bit different than we would normally see is the block size. Due to the abnormal shape of the property, it was staff's recommendation to make sure that to allow the property to have larger block sizes in order to maximize the usage of the lot and maximize infill development within the city. The city staff does believe that the design of this development does minimize the impact on neighboring residents as well. The developer did make sure that the lots within the subdivision did match according to the other lots in the area. So there's nothing that's abnormally big or abnormally small compared to either the Richards Park or Alta Vista subdivision. And as already mentioned, the stormwater on the site is being managed appropriately. This item was advertised within the Laramie Boomerang, and letters were sent out to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the property. And city staff does recommend approval of this preliminary plat based on findings of fact and conclusions of law and subject to recommended conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Shahidi. I appreciate your report. Council, are there any questions for Mr. Shahidi at this time?
I have a few.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. So the piece that you talked about with the property owners will be required to kind of mitigate whatever extra water happens if there's flooding, that sort of thing. Is there a reason that the developer isn't putting that in initially within the builds? And I guess the next question would be, and this may be out of your kind of purview, but how will those homeowners who will be purchasing that, those properties know that that will be expected of them?
So in order to have this sellable lots, the lot does need to be graded to specifications, and the detention pond does need to be installed according to the preliminary plat and eventually the final plat. And so some of those will be in place. That being said, the developer does need to submit documents with Wyoming DEQ to mitigate stormwater and show that they have accounted for that during the development stage. But also but full compliance with the plan that was submitted, the engineer design report, does not occur fully until every lot is developed. As far as every property owner knowing that they're not supposed to have adverse impact on their neighbors, it's not something that we necessarily go around and tell everybody, but if somebody does call, we do let them know. We do follow up on it to make sure that the design has stayed the same and no major changes have occurred, either from building plans to preliminary plat process. And if changes have occurred, we address it accordingly.
Okay. Can I follow up on that? So that piece that is the property owner's portion, that is in the interim before everything is fully built out?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's it.
Any other questions from council right now? So we'll open to the public for public comment on this item. If you are here with us in the room, please come to the podium. If you're on Zoom, raise your hand and we will acknowledge you. Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Candace Parody. I live on 2836 Dover Drive, which would be directly underneath this development. And we have had some water issues there, especially one of the 100-year storms. And we had the preliminary plat meeting with the city planners, I believe it's called, and I appreciated that meeting and their input, and I'm just hoping that before this hits final stages, that we are indeed sure about the water flow from there. And then I have a concern about everything within the proposal. Talks about when it's completed. Well, I'm worried about what happens before it's completed, too, in the interim, and how long a lot might be sitting there before it's sold, and the gradation that goes on, and when that's going to go on. And I just want to have those recorded along with the soil sample test that I don't think has come through yet either. And thirdly, if indeed that detention pond fails, is that the city's responsibility? Is that the developer's responsibility? I heard that about the property owners being responsible for not sloughing off water or whatever to their neighbors, but what about that detention pond and who's responsible for that? Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight and for your comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, I return to council. Are there any comments from council?
No. Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, we have
Councilor O'Doherty.
All right. Councilor O'Doherty.
Can we get Mr. Shahidi to address Ms. Parody's concerns again, maybe clarify? Thank you.
Mr. Shahidi.
In relation to Ms. Parody's concerns, there is, the interim is kind of managed by Wyoming DEQ and the developer's submittal to them. It's not, I believe that the developer might be able to answer that a little bit better than I can, and the everything that will come with that submittal. As far as soil samples and everything, that doesn't necessarily come up until later in the process. So it's not something that we require or ask for during this submittal.
Thank you for your comments. Any other? Councilor Gabriel.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, if we could go a little bit further into the detention pond situation, how is it determined the size of that pond? Because there's that area, know it fairly well, pretty good slope there, and it seems like potentially could be, with a big storm, some potential damage. How is the size of the detention pond determined?
I think that there's multiple different factors, but I think either our engineering staff or the applicant's engineer would probably be better able to answer that.
Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jared Ralph. I'm the civil design engineer for the Ridgeline Estates project. In a nutshell, when you're designing a detention pond, it's you're looking at pre-development and post-development. So pre-development out there right now, it's vacant lots. I go in and I classify it as, there's gravel, there's green area, and they have different absorption rates. They allow different amounts of storm out onto, Harney and 30th. So I look at that, I calculate that, like, what do I think it's producing now in a storm? And then you take the developed site and you have the pavement that is going to be there, and then there's with subdivisions it's 40 to 45%. You assume that the lot's going to be 40 to 45% imperviousness, meaning that you're going to have a house that just sheds water. You're gonna have a driveway that sheds water, but otherwise it's gonna be mostly landscaped. You look at an aerial; those lots are mostly house in the middle and surrounded by lawn. So that produces a number for what stormwater is produced in a 100-year storm, and the city of Laramie's standards say that you take the existing lot or the existing ground, what it's discharging in a 10-year storm, and that's your allowable discharge for a 100-year storm. So then the detention pond is the difference between the developed 100-year discharge and the existing 10-year discharge. And that calculation gives you the volume of the pond. So does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Are there any other questions or comments?
So you can
Councilor
just
Richardson.
come right back up if you'd like to, Jared. Sorry.
Hope you get some exercise tonight.
Get my steps in. All right.
So just going into a little bit more detail then also about that gradation, and the gradation is all completed prior to the building happens, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So I guess from your question earlier, when they go in to construct the lots, just what we call overlot grading, we'll have, points where you can say like, oh, that water's going to flow to the north, that water's going to flow to the south. And that's noted in my report, like what is assumed to contribute to Basin A versus Basin B. So if there is a stormwater issue, that's my problem. And what I would look at is, okay, what was planned and then what was actually developed. So we could say, oh, Basin B was altered to discharge into a different spot. That's why we're having these problems. We need to go back and fix this, or, something like that, if that helps.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Seeing none. City Clerk, roll call.
Pierce.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington. Absent. That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
That motion passes. Thank you, City Clerk. Item 14, Councilor Richardson.
Okay. I move to approve option agreement regarding real property between the City of Laramie, a Wyoming municipality, city, and Cornerstone Housing Group, LLC, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Richardson, second, Councilor Gabriel. City Manager?
My apologies, if you'll give me just a moment.
What's that?
Thank you, Council. Happy to be here this evening, and I would like to introduce, Thanks, Bob. I'd like to introduce item number 14, and this is the option agreement regarding real property between the City of Laramie and Cornerstone Housing Group. So a little bit of background on this. I'll let you know that we do have a representative from Cornerstone here this evening who will walk us through some of the specifics of the project. So I will sort of gloss over those and leave that detail to the experts. But I would remind you, Council, that in 2018, the City of Laramie did previously partner, excuse me, with the Cornerstone Housing Group. That partnership resulted in a senior affordable living complex currently now sitting out in the Turner Tract in the Grandview Heights area at Crystal Court and Beach Street. Laramie and Albany County right now are designated eligible for 2023 low-income housing tax credits under guidelines from the, I won't give you the citation, but from HUD, from the federal government, under the programs that are administered here in Wyoming by the Wyoming Community Development Authority. Cornerstone Housing Group approached the city recently. They do desire to develop a second affordable housing complex here in Laramie. This project being open not just to seniors, but to any eligible persons who meet the income requirements. We've been discussing this project with them. They do desire to locate in the Turner Tract again, and we looked at a number of properties in that area, ultimately landing on a property currently located at Boulder Drive and Beach and Turner Streets on property that is owned by the city. The property that is contained within this option agreement tonight is zoned O, which means open. Open meaning undesignated, not open space, but literally undesignated. And B1, we do believe, according to the map that was presented to you in your packet, that we would need to consolidate a couple of lots, the O zoned lot and the B1 lot, to encompass the acreage that they'll need for this project. Just generally, we're looking at about 72 affordable housing apartment units, and that would represent 4.2% of the overall units that we and the federal and state statistics say are needed here in Laramie. Cornerstone has agreed to offer more 3- and 4-bedroom units than they originally had contemplated based on the data that the city has and that we provided to them. I'll let you them tell you more about that. They can also talk to you about the amenities that would come with this affordable housing project. And I would remind you that the rents, if they do qualify for the low-income housing tax credits, would be set under the HUD IRS Section 42 program guidelines. The option agreement would allow Cornerstone an opportunity to purchase this property over the course of the next 12 months. They need this option agreement in order to submit a pre-application at the end of September to put them in the queue to be considered for the low-income housing tax credits. This option would show that they have site control, which must be demonstrated in order for their application to be eligible in this funding round. And I think with that, I will probably let Vice President from Cornerstone come up and talk to you and give you some more detail, and then maybe at the end of that, stand for any questions that you would have. So if that's okay, Vice Mayor, I'd like to ask Brad Schwab, he's the Vice President of Development for Cornerstone, to approach the podium. Again, he does have some slides. I think that'll answer a lot of your questions. And I would note that Mr. Schwab was actually involved with the Legacy Senior Housing Project here in Laramie, so I have some familiarity with the City of Laramie, with the first project that they have done. And I was told by a bug, I guess, that he might have some planner in his background as well. So, thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab, for coming tonight.
Yes, I'm a recovering planner. Thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Brad Schwab with Cornerstone Housing Group. Cornerstone Housing Group's been in the affordable housing industry for over 30 years, and several of those years we've been a developer in Wyoming, and as Janine said, we're a corporate citizen of Laramie already with our existing affordable senior development on Crystal Court. What do I, you move me to the next slide?
You just tell me next slide.
Okay, yeah. So real quick, I need my glasses. What we're proposing this time is an affordable family development, 72 units of housing, targeting young families or families and young professionals. As everyone knows, the high interest rates, high inflation over the last several years has made home ownership unattainable for many households, unfortunately. We recognize that there is a housing shortage in Laramie, so this development is needed. We have received preliminary demand numbers, and they look very promising. The development is proposed on 6 acres. We may go up to 7, so somewhere in that 6 to 7 range. The development is proposed right across the street, really, from our existing senior development across Beach Street at the southeast corner of Beach and Boulder. It's city-owned property, as Janine said. That's why we need the option from City Council. We will apply for financing through WCDA. And that includes low-income housing tax credits, also home investment partnership program financing, and National Housing Trust funds. Having said all that, this is not subsidized housing or public housing. Folks have to income qualify. Their rents aren't subsidized at all. So I just wanted to make that distinction. And the project can be developed consistent with all your rules and development regulation and fulfills many city policies. Next slide. A little bit more about us. We are a privately held attainable housing developer headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. I work remotely for Cornerstone. I live in Metro Denver, so just a short drive up. We construct, own, and manage our own portfolio. So we will manage this property, both properties in Laramie. And we have a minimum hold time of 15 years before we consider selling. We develop in the West, Southwest, and Midwest. And the bottom denotes our existing project, Legacy Senior Residence at 1621 Crystal Court. Next slide. So this map, it may be hard to see, but there is a orange-yellow line that denotes the 6-7 acres that we're discussing at Beach and Boulder on the east side of town. Great location relative to many amenities, good transportation infrastructure, great access to a lot of the institutions and jobs that are in the community. So good location for the type of development that we're proposing. Next slide. When you zoom into the site a little bit, it's really an exciting location next to many great amenities in the community, to include the hospital, the university, of course, which is a world-class institution. The rec center is across the street from Boulder. Across the street on Boulder. The high school, of course, is right there, which is a great amenity. Walmart's also pretty much next door. It's less than a mile away. The community college. And what I thought was really interesting is we're right next door to the Laramie Workforce Center with the employment agencies. What a great synergy for workforce housing, attainable housing. Zooming further into the site, these boundaries aren't set in stone. We're still working with our architect to figure out what the optimal boundaries are. So these could change, and that's why we're coming to you with saying, between 6 and 7 acres. But one thing that we know is constant in that gray line is a set of power poles with overhead electrical lines on them. And what we're asking our architect to do is to place the buildings west of those overhead electric lines to sort of provide a buffer between our development and the existing single family east of us. We propose three-story buildings and a standalone clubhouse. There'll also be garages, on-site parking, and on-site stormwater detention, again, meeting all of your regulations. Next slide. The development itself will have several amenities for the use and enjoyment of the residents, to include a community room, a business center, a fitness center, and a playground, and a barbecue area, outdoor kitchen with covered seating. The site will also have an on-site manager and maintenance staff as well, who are our employees. So again, we control the management and the maintenance of the property. Next slide. The units themselves are very nice, have all the modern features you would expect in an apartment. We use energy efficient appliances, so it comes with the fridge, freezers, stove with the vented hood, microwave, dishwasher, disposal, washer and dryer in the units themselves, and ceiling fan in the living room and bedrooms. The units have a combination of plank flooring and carpeting, and hard surface countertops. We don't have those spec'd yet, but I'm thinking it'd probably be quartz. Window coverings provided, internet and cable hookups, but we don't provide the actual service. If the residents decide that they want to have their own internet and cable, they pay for that. And private storage and a patio or balcony, depending if you're on the first floor or not. Benefits to Laramie, we already talked about some of those. We know there's high demand for housing. The community's growing population, jobs are growing. Housing has grown some, but it's my understanding that the permits aren't keeping up with the demand. Economic development, the need to have a workforce in the community that's close to the jobs. This is what this development will help provide. In that case, not only is it providing a community development improvement, but providing the units, but it's also helping with economic development as well. One thing I'd like to point out is, when we use an architect or hire an architect, one of the things we tell them is it's important to us that we fit into the community. And since we hold the property for a minimum of 15 years, we use high quality building materials that are durable and low maintenance. The idea being is if we do sell in 15 years or 30 years, whatever that is, that the development holds up. So we use stone and like a hardy plank board siding, lap siding. So those materials weather well, they hold up, and all we have to do is paint at the most. The driveways will be concrete, not asphalt. So again, a very durable surface. And when you drive by it, I don't think anyone would say that's affordable housing. It's really hard to distinguish from market rate. So, next slide. Residents do have to qualify. They get background checked and credit checked. They have to income qualify. And by that, I mean they can't make more than is allotted. When we get the tax credits, get the tax credit award, we have to agree to cap the salaries of the incomes of people that come in. And we'll go over that a little bit more. But they also have to income qualify the other way, meaning they have to work, like they have to prove income. So these people are good people. They work, they're providing for their families, and they have to demonstrate that to live here. Next slide. So this table might be hard to read on the screen, but it talks about or shows the rents, the rent limits for Albany County in 2023. And I'll just go through it real quick. So on the very low side, a 1-bedroom with a person making 30% of area median income, their rent would be capped at $439. If we go out to a 4-bedroom up to like a 50% rent, meaning that the household earns up to 50% of the area median income. Their rent is capped at $1,204, and there's sort of a range in between there. One thing of note is when we first met with staff, we were proposing majority 1 and 2 bedrooms with a few 3 bedrooms, and Janine and staff said, you know, it's really better that we have more 3s and some 4s. And we adjusted heavily based on that guidance. So now we have 12 4-bedroom units. We have a new development that's in Mills, just outside of Casper, and we heard from our management company, Beacon Management, that the 4-bedroom units went fast. One of the first to go. So we know there's need, and based on where our economy is with the inflation, we think these units will go fast as well. So we have 15 1-bedroom, 24 2-bedroom, 21 3-bedroom, and 12 4-bedroom units. Next slide, please. What's really interesting is we're offering a lot of variety in the types of units, but we're also offering a variety of who can qualify based on their income. It's pretty common to see in a tax credit development for the developer to try to focus on the 60% units, meaning the residents can qualify up to 60% of area median income, and part of the reason is because higher rents are attainable that way. When you include 30% rents and 50% rents, that reduces the rents and then the revenue to the project. Well, we have quite a few projects, or quite a few units in this project for the 30 and the 50% rents as well. So this is true affordable housing. Like, this is going to help. This is going to help a lot of families. I just wanted to point that out. It's something that I think is interesting to note in this case. Kind of going through the income like we did with the rents. So as you can see here, a 1-person household at 30% income limit, that's $19,770 is their max income. You know, that's pretty low. But if we go out to the 60% rents at a 6-person household, they can earn up to 65, which is actually pretty good. That's pretty high. So you know, there's a wide range of rents and incomes here to accommodate different households and their situations. Next slide. This is an example building elevation. We haven't gotten into design yet, so it won't look exactly like this. But you can see in this case there's stone. The siding is cement board, and you can see the undulation in the building front, in the building wall, to break up that massing. So this is a 3-story example. It has a patio on the ground floor in the units, and then the 2nd and 3rd story units have the balcony. The wall plane undulates, again, to break up that massing so it doesn't look monolithic from the street. It's just to decorate it, to ordain, to make the facade more ornate. These are examples of the interiors. The upper left-hand corner is the kitchen. You see it's spacious. It's got the appliances. It's got a nice island, and it's got a hard surface countertop. That is a quartz product. And then the bottom left-hand side is the living room, and you can see it's got hard plank flooring, and then the bottom right's a bedroom, and then that's a bathroom. Should note that the 3 and 4 bedroom units come with 2 bath, and the 1 and 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Next slide. The next steps is we have a tax credit application due to WCDA very soon, next week. And along with that, we need to show site control, which is why we're requesting the option from council. We also have to provide WCDA a market study and a phase 1 environmental, which those things are in process, and we'll have those ready for the application. From that point forward, we have to get the site ready for construction, and that includes getting city approvals, what we call entitlements. The northern lot that the city owns is zoned open, as Janine mentioned. That has to be rezoned to a district that permits our use. The south lot's zoned B1, and the B1 district permits multifamily as a conditional use. So we'll talk to staff and see what district makes the most sense for that northern lot. Again, B1 is permits multifamily as conditional use, so we'll have to submit a conditional use application to the city, and then whatever boundaries we all agree on, we'll have to replat that and get that recorded. One thing I should note that I didn't put on the slide is we'll also hold a meeting with the neighbors. We'll invite them to meet us, what we call a neighborhood meeting, to have a similar type of presentation like this, kind of go through the project, all aspects of it, and answer any questions, concerns that they have. Assuming all goes well, fingers crossed, construction will commence in the summer of 2024. If all goes well with construction, hopefully we'll open summer of 2025. That concludes the presentation. Went pretty fast. I'm sure you have questions. Please let me know if you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwab. Councilors, any questions for Mr. Schwab or for City Manager?
Andy.
Councilor Somerville.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Excuse me, I have two questions for you. Apologize. One of them is regarding the income limits, just doing quick math on the rents. So those look like, I was working with the one bedroom at the 30% level. Those still look like those rents are benchmarking at approximately 38 to 40% of somebody's monthly income.
Okay.
And I understand you guys don't necessarily set those rents. Those are set by WCDA or the housing tax credits or something along those lines. That's correct, right?
Yeah, the rent limits are actually set by a HUD and administered by WCDA. Yeah.
Okay. Just a quick general comment of even at 40% of somebody's income, doing the math on that on a one bedroom, those are primarily, I'm going to guess, going to be seniors on a fixed income, leaving them very little money every month. So that's just troubling to me on a different scale. The second question I had for you was, I did not see it in the presentation, and I apologize if I missed it. Do these apartments have air conditioning in them?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I should have mentioned that there's central heating and air conditioning.
Okay, great.
Each unit, yes.
I appreciate that. Again, a concern for especially our older residents. When I moved here 20 some odd years ago, I didn't feel like I need air conditioning, but I feel like it's gotten a little warmer in Laramie, and it seems like it's a necessity now. So I appreciate you guys making sure that's in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. I have a few questions as well. One of them, you had said that you have a minimum hold time of these units for 15 years. When thinking about this, one thing I would like us to think about is how do we continue to make these affordable even 15 years down the road? So what does that look like, when you sell it? And I guess what is the average hold time that you have for most of your units?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I'm not prepared to answer is how long WCDA requires these units to be in the program. And I apologize, I should know that, but I don't. At a very minimum, it has to be 15 years, but some states require up to 30. And so I'll have to follow up and get back to you on that. But, you know, it'll be easy to get. I just don't know off the top of my head. A lot of times these do stay in the program. Let's just say, for instance, that we get to year 15 and Wyoming only requires a 15-year hold on the attainable aspect of the project. A lot of times we, as the developer, can put it back into the program. We can reapply for tax credits. Usually by that time, developments can qualify for what's called a rehab. And that's just making sure that the product, if it has anything wrong with the system, the windows need replaced, let's just say the wiring's out of code. I don't suspect that would happen. I'm just going for examples. You can bring all the units up to modern standards, and then they would have to stay in the program for, you know, a minimum, whatever the minimum hold period is. So that's typically what happens. We've had quite a few of our developments for longer than 15 years. I don't know what our average is, but definitely as a company policy, we hold it for 15 years minimum. Yeah.
I've got a couple more, if that's okay, Mayor.
Go ahead, Counselor.
My other question is, you noted that you do credit checks, just kind of based on the, you know, so many of these folks are low income, and oftentimes then, you know, there are credit issues that may go along with that, just to not having much money, and the pickles that you find yourself in at those times. What are those credit checks based on, and kind of what is your cutoff point for folks being eligible?
Yeah, another good question. I don't know the answer. I apologize. I'll have to get back to you on that one as well. Yeah, I'm not involved in the management side of the business, so I don't know that off the top of my head. Yeah.
And I have a last question.
Go for it.
This also is probably kind of management, but maybe you have an idea on it. In thinking about your application process, is that how do you kind of advertise to folks to ensure that you're really reaching the populations that we're hoping to get in these?
So are you asking how we market the site? Yeah. I do know a little bit about that. So while the development is going on, construction is going on, we'll start advertising in various places around the community for pre-leasing. The idea is having a list of folks that want to move in as soon as we get a CFO from the city, and I think they do that online, social media. It's a big part of it. But then also in the community, bulletin boards at the grocery store, for example. I mean, it's just simple stuff like that. So, yeah.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Gabriel.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Brad, just curious about the 72 units you've talked about and the flexibility on, you know, you mentioned that talking to the city manager, maybe we need more 3 and 4 bedroom units. How flexible are you in your development when you finally make a determination that this is where we're going to go? I was just wondering, well, you know, maybe we should do more here, less here, and so on.
Yeah.
How is that determined?
It's my understanding that when we submit our application to WCDA and we put the unit mix in there, like we're kind of held to that standard. So we've got great flexibility up until that point that we put the application in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor O'Doherty.
It's not 15 years to so that we know that it wouldn't be bought up by a private equity firm and everything gets turned upside down. Like it has to be managed the same way with these conditions. Is that what that 15 years assures us?
Yes. Yeah. So theoretically, we could sell it, you know, a year or two after it opens. We have to sign a land use restriction. that deals with the affordability aspect of the property. And whoever buys it, you know, just like when you buy a house, you're shown certain things, you understand that whatever that may be, that they have to disclose to you. Same thing, the developer or the next owner would get that disclosure, and they'd be held to the same standards that we would, meaning that the property has to stay in the program for that minimum hold period. Yeah. One other thing to note, what's really interesting about this tax credit program is it was part of the government's decision to get itself out of the public housing industry and put it into private hands. Essentially, is essentially the government came with a tax credit program to put the need to develop affordable housing in private industry. And it's a great program, and it's been largely successful. In fact, it's the most successful program used to deliver affordable housing in America. And it's been that way for many, many years, going back really to the program inception back in 1986, 87. The government does a good job of providing rules, policies, and regulations on how these developments are constructed, delivered, managed, minimum expectations, et cetera. And they provide those policies and then also the oversight. Like, these things are audited, and, you know, state staff comes down and looks at them, inspects them. We as private developers, you know, love being in situations like this where we come to council and say, hey, we've got one already in Laramie, we'd like to do one close by. You know, but to do that and to have credibility, we have to show you that we're doing a good job in the one already in your community. You know, so the program keeps us honest and making sure that what we deliver on behalf of the federal government and the state is good, safe, sanitary housing, suitable for anyone to live in, including our neighbors, friends, relatives. So that's how we approach it, particularly when we design, is would we put our relatives in what we build? And the answer has to be yes. So I got off track a little bit, but the question reminded me of that aspect of the program.
Are there any other questions from the council? Then we will move to public comment. City Manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I was hoping to wrap up after Brad's presentation, if that's okay. I left a couple things till the end. So what I wanted to offer just in closing of the presentation here is, as staff of this project, I would assert to you that it is consistent with goal number 4 adopted by the City Council this year of the Economic Development Milestone C, with the notion that we wanted to support affordable housing and particularly low-income housing. Also, it's consistent with the Laramie Housing Study 2030, the Turner Tract Area Plan 2013, the Laramie Comprehensive Plan, and our planning manager, Taney, reminded me I left off the Thrive Economic Development Plan from 2020, but it is consistent. This project is consistent with that plan as well. And then just in closing, the terms of the option agreement as being recommended to you tonight by city staff are very similar to what we did with the Legacy Senior Housing Project a number of years ago. The city, in order to help bring this project to fruition, would be selling this property for less than fair market value or appraised value. We're recommending a reduction of up to 20% from appraised value. That appraisal will take place in the next few months. And that would be how the city is a partner to the project and how it brings it to fruition. To put that in perspective, the Legacy Senior Housing Project, we provided a 17% reduction from appraised value, so this is a little bit higher, but certainly I felt that was warranted, and I would recommend that to you simply because the need for this family and low-income housing is so deep. As I mentioned in the opening, what this 72 units brings to our market is only representing a little more than 4% of the overall need. So that helps demonstrate how deep the need is here, and so a deeper discount, 20% contribution from the city seemed realistic. If you have any other questions about the option agreement, I'm happy to answer those.
Are there any other questions?
Vice Mayor, just of note, we do have Brett Glass with a hand up for public comment.
All right, we're going to public comments now. Anyone in the audience who would like to comment, or if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. You can allow Mr. Glass into the room, please.
Mayor and members of council, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Glass.
Thank you. This seems to be a perennial thing. Every few years, we have a tax credit developer coming to Laramie, and sometimes we're taken in by this, and sometimes we're not, depending on how familiar council is with what's going on here. The developers who do this are motivated by several things. First of all, they're getting tax credits, which, by the way, they often bundle into securities and sell, so they make a quick profit on that. They're motivated by preferential treatment by the city, and they're motivated by the fact that their rents actually, while they claim that their housing is affordable, it actually is not any more affordable than anything else in town. In fact, it's frequently less. I mean, take a look at the rents on that slide again. Those are higher. My family owns a few rental properties in town. Those are higher than anything we have or expect to be able to get. Those are not affordable rents any more than anything else that exists in Laramie. If you accept this deal at all, you certainly should hold their feet to the fire and ask for better, because it's certainly not affordable. The other thing is that there are loopholes in the rules the federal government rules that are exploited in college towns. You can bet that those 3- and 4-bedroom apartments, while you may envision a family in need living there, are more likely to be occupied by groups of college students, because if even one of them one of the roommates is working full time or not a college student, that's it. The rest of them can live and get and can move in. And the developers in the past, especially a couple of well-known ones in Laramie, like Mantrek, have exploited this to the hilt. So I urge you to be really careful and don't just rubber stamp this as, obviously a good thing, because again, these developers are in it for the money. They're not in it out of the goodness of their hearts, and this may not be a very good thing for Laramie at all. It's certainly, again, not affordable, as affordable as what my own family maintains, and many other people like me. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Glass. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, I return to council. Do you have any further comments?
Dr. Mayor.
Councilor O'Doherty.
I know that developers are in the business of making money. That's why they're there. But we desperately need housing in Laramie. That the other lot that these folks own is bringing in $30,000 in taxes a year to the county, some of which comes back to the city. So having a lot that's not being used is not generating those kinds of taxes. So we will get some of that money back. I'm happy to have more development. I worry about where all those students would go to school, and I worry about, would we really have management on the site? I've heard nightmare stories about some other developments that are owned by out-of-town developers. So I hope that we can have that. And I guess I just feel like this is a great opportunity for us, and so I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Seeing none, City Clerk, if you can call the roll for vote.
Richardson.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington. Absent. That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
The motion passes. Item 15, Counselor O'Doherty, are you prepared to do that one?
Yes, I am. I move to approve original ordinance 2065, amending Title 15.14.050.I of the Laramie Municipal Code as recommended by the Planning Commission on second reading in accordance with findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Second.
Motion by Counselor O'Doherty, second by Counselor Pierce. Mr. Shahidi.
Vice Mayor, Council, tonight we have before you the second reading of the ordinance, which is going to change some of the standards within our screening and dumpster, recycling, trash handling, and recycling facilities. As described during the first reading, this is primarily going to affect commercial buildings and multifamily residential buildings that are the primary user of dumpster facilities. That being said, nobody will be forced to come into conformance until the time comes where they're either submitting a new site plan or making major modifications on to their building. To give you a brief synopsis of what we discussed during the first reading, recently there's been some changes in trash service around the community, and as such we've seen that there's been a fair bit of people trying to come back to city services. This is generally not a problem as far as capacity goes for our Public Works Department. However, what they've seen is that trash enclosures throughout the community do not meet city standards, which was not a requirement at the time of development. However, in order to service them, they do need to be screened and fit our dumpster systems. As such, the Public Works Department came and asked us to look into making adjustments to our trash enclosure requirements, essentially making sure that everybody is now required to have a dumpster enclosure that fits city equipment. However, they are still able to choose whoever they want to service their property. So they do not have to come to the city, but they do have to make sure that the dumpster enclosure can accommodate city dumpsters. That being said, there's been a number of changes throughout the section. In the ordinance, you can see that I've just struck out everything and added everything back with the changes. However, if you do look at the Planning Commission's packet, there is an attachment A, which does indicate the things that were currently there, the things that were there and were perhaps moved within the section, things that were deleted, and things that were added and are new. Those are differentiated by color coordination. I will address the comment during the public hearing regarding the downtown area. That's something that's not in this, but that's certainly something that we can add. Primarily, the dumpsters that are downtown will probably stay there because there isn't going to be a major change in use that would require them to come into conformance. So the areas that you would see downtown are generally retail based, and a retail to a retail shift doesn't mean that it needs to come into conformance. However, there are certainly areas in the downtown that could probably use some dumpster enclosures as well. And so while I do believe that there are certain areas that we could find exemptions for, I do believe that requiring dumpster enclosures in certain areas would be beneficial to the downtown landscape. This item was published within the Laramie Boomerang as public notice and required by the city statutes. And Planning Commission does recommend approval of this ordinance on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Shahidi. Council, are there any questions? Councilor Somerville?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. My question would be, I understand your comment that there might be some downtown areas that would benefit from enclosures, but I am a little concerned about even the appearance that major changes would have to be made if a building use were to change. I know that the downtown is continuously encouraging economic development. Is that something that we could potentially have a little bit more information on for third reading if we needed to consider some type of language in the ordinance?
Just to clarify, you're looking for information on what would be the trigger for downtown development and the requirements that would come thereafter to come into conformance with this code. Is that correct?
No. My question is, you mentioned that there were areas you thought, I guess let me start over. My thought is that we need to exempt the downtown from this requirement, but your comment was you thought there might be areas that would benefit from enclosures, dumpster enclosures in the downtown, and I wondered if we could have that information, those specific areas or examples that you think that we should take into consideration before maybe an amendment was brought forward on third reading. Or while we were discussing third reading, would you be able to be prepared to provide that information at third reading of what your specific examples are?
Certainly, I can be prepared for that on third reading.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Richardson?
I would also be interested in your interpretation of what was being asked about what would trigger that. So if you wanted to include that next time as well, that'd be great. Or if you know it now, great.
Yeah, I can include that next time as well.
Are there any other questions from council at this time? Then we'll go to public comment. Any public comment?
Vice Mayor, we have Brett Glass.
Okay, Mr. Glass, if you'll allow him into the room.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of council. I just wanted to follow up on my earlier comments, hearing the current discussion, and talk about some examples of major renovations which would trigger potentially this requirement. As you probably know, the Altitude Brew Pub is considering establishing a B&B on the second floor. This would be a major change of use and major renovation, and would, it would be a great thing for downtown, I think, but it is exactly the kind of use change which, according to the current code, would trigger a requirement, and they, in fact, have a dumpster about back in the alley that they would otherwise have no place for. Also, very frequently downtown, we have retail spaces that switch back and forth between retail and professional office space. That is another transition which goes more than a couple of levels up or down the list that's included in the UDC. And so that's another example where you could get a doctor or a lawyer downtown, something very, very nice sort of business to have downtown. And that's another thing that could trigger it. I really do think we have to think carefully about this, and what I would recommend is that, again, we look very carefully at exempting the DC district. There are other examples of exemptions like this in the same section of the code, and I think it just makes sense here. We don't want to deny anybody the ability to have a dumpster that they've always had just because they do something positive and renovate a business or upgrade what they're doing in the space. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Glass. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I return to council. Are there any comments before we vote? City Clerk, if you can call the roll for the vote.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Pierce.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington, absent. That's 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion passes. Item 16, Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to approve original ordinance number 2066, amending multiple sections within Title 5 and 15 of the Laramie Municipal Code for the purposes of updating definitions, uses, dimensions in city code as a standard practice as recommended by the Planning Commission on first reading in accordance with findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Motion by Councilor Pierce, second by Councilor Shumway.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. As a matter of course, every year we have a running list of items we find in the Unified Development Code that we feel need clarification, whether that comes from a developer, it comes from a project we're working on. But we constantly kind of run into things that could be clarified or changed to align with another section of code, or perhaps even to make the code more flexible. So that's what this item is all about. It is, as you read, a matter of course that we do every year. This text amendment update has 30 total. They were thoroughly reviewed by the Planning Commission at their August 28th meeting, and they recommended approval. To break it down a little bit, we do have in the staff report, as well as your cover sheet, the updates divided into substantive changes, of which there are 18, and then minor changes, of which there are 12. I am glad to go through them all with you this evening if you wish. I will leave it at that, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
And the wishes of council. Are there any questions or requests for additional update? Councilor Richardson.
Sorry, I have just a few questions on a few items within here, but I actually would love if you do not go through every single one. It would be great. Do you want me, Vice Mayor Cumby, to just go through the questions how would you like me to do this?
If you could identify the questions that you have, it may answer questions that the rest of us have.
Thank you. So in the proposed definition on page 3, number 1, side and rear, the part, it reads funny to me, and I'm wondering if something is missing or if I just don't speak developer speak, but where it says, and no wall or fence shall exceed 8 feet in height when located more than the 45 feet parallel setback line from the front lot line. I don't know if there's something missing between when located the 45 feet from the parallel setback line, or if that's just how that is supposed to read.
And just give me a second to look at this one and refresh my memory. I know that this one does have to do with us trying to clarify what the parallel setback, or the setback line is in general, that fences have to meet different criteria, but I can see your point. But what we try to do here is there's a height that a fence can be up to the lot line, essentially, with the front property line, and then 45 feet back from that line, a parallel line from the front building lot line, that height changes. So in essence, that's what we're trying to clarify.
I think it's just maybe missing a word, or it's not missing a word, and I just am not. Is anybody else? So it's page 3, number 1. It is so after the semicolon, it says, and no wall or fence shall exceed 8 feet in height when located more than the 45 feet parallel setback line from the front lot line. And I don't know if it's supposed to say 8 feet in height when located more than the 45 feet from the parallel setback, like if it's just missing a little word in there. Sorry, this is very small, but I didn't quite understand it.
Mayor, through you. So it's reading as a noun there, that 45-foot parallel setback line.
Okay, thank you.
So that's it is a little strange, but it is the whole thing. I'm reading it as a noun, so it works, but I'm glad to look at it, because our whole goal here is to clarify for people that are calling in too. Citizens call, like, building a fence, what does this mean? And we want to interpret it, but perhaps we could skip a call by just updating the code. That's kind of what we're doing, but I'm glad to just review that one again between now and second reading and maybe change it.
Point of information, Your Honor, could you help us find that? Because I don't see a number 1 on page 3. I might not be on the right.
Oh, it's the document that is the TA-23-07-UDC text amendment update. So it's not the first document, it's the second document that's like 19 pages long.
Okay, thank you. And if it's a noun, maybe they need to be hyphens between the 45-foot set foot.
Parallel
Thank you.
setback line.
Did you have any other questions, Councilor O'Doherty? Thank you.
No, I was just trying to get caught.
Thank you. And are there any other questions?
I have one more.
Okay.
On page 12, proposed 15.14.080.d.4.b, or parentheses I, under I, increase garage dimensions. It says, in addition to the 10 by 20 standard garage space allotted for parking vehicles that allow for storage in front of parked vehicles. I just want to make sure, this to me makes it sound, okay, so sorry, let me read the whole thing. Increase garage dimensions in addition to the 10 by 20 standard garage space allotted for parked vehicles that allow for storage in front of parked vehicles. I just want to clarify from you, because to me this makes it sound like they must have a garage, but didn't we pass an ordinance that says they don't have to have a garage? So just that piece.
Mayor, through you again, this section has to do specifically with the multifamily housing requirement, of which there is storage requirements. So garage is an option, and that's what this specific section has to do with. But since you're supposed to park cars in the garage, right, we wanted to make it clear that in addition to the space that's allotted for a car, any additional space could go towards that storage requirement.
I'm wondering if it could say something like, in addition to the optional 10 by 20 standard garage space, because that isn't mandatory, right?
Mayor, again, through you, I'll look at this to be sure again between now and second reading, but I believe that this is kind of an option list, given that it's I think there are several other options that it's not required. You don't have to do, like you said, the garage, but that's one of the options to get the developer the storage space that they need.
Great. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'll move to public comment. Any comment from the public, either here or on Zoom? Raise your hand. Seeing none, I move back to council. Do you have any comments before we vote? Counselor O'Doherty.
I just want to thank the planning staff for always looking out for things to clarify the code. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, if you can call the roll for the vote.
Pierce.
Yes.
O'Doherty.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Gabriel.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes.
Shumway.
Yes.
Somerville.
Yes.
Cumby.
Yes.
Harrington. Absent. That's 8 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 absent, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Clerk. That motion passes. Item 17. Are there any further public comments? Seeing none, we'll move to item 18, consideration for future council work session topics. Seeing none, oh, sorry, Councilor Shumway.
Vice Mayor, I was wondering where we could go to get a list of future council work session topics so we could see what they are. We used to get those with our upcoming meetings, but
Would that be this?
is that what it is? Okay, all right.
Vice Mayor?
Or
Mayor? Oh, it's included in your work packet, but I can print out a few copies and put them in your.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Then we will move on to item 19. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you. I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
That motion passes.
Enthusiastically.
Did we vote? No.
Aye.